So last time I was testing out the 8 Elite, I forgot to enable the CPU and GPU utilization monitor. And that made me angry because I usually don't forget that, and that's a very important monitor to have. And I decided, you know what, I will redo the whole video and I will add one more new thing. Now, besides monitoring the overall frequencies, temperatures and stuff like that, I will be monitoring the power usage of the device. And this is something that I actually did attempt to do when I started to test out the game, but I didn't like the way the application worked and it created a lot of clutter on the screen. So I managed to find something quite useful, and we will be measuring the power usage directly from the wall. Now thankfully this device does have bypass charging, which means that you can use the power supply or you can use the charger to basically supply the chipset, to supply the whole phone with electricity, with power, and the battery does get shut off or turned off when bypass charging is engaged. So all the wattage that will be drawn directly from the wall, which is actually the better way to handle things, because it's for starters much better electricity, much more stable, and overall it has a unlimited amount of it. Basically the battery is not going to be destroyed by constantly being used. Now to enable the feature you have to go into the settings and pause USB power delivery. That's where it's located at. This is the option that you want to click, and in my case here I already have enabled it. I have used it on my previous device as well. I use it on my old device as well. Very useful, and basically this is the reason why my batteries last so long. My S23 battery is still in almost 100% health, which is amazing after 2.5 years. So this is the thing that I'll be using to monitor how much power is being drawn. This does get connected directly into the wall, and then you connect the charger into this thing, and then you basically turn on the game, and it will automatically just swap to the bypass charging mode, which you will see later, because we will see the power usage somewhere on the screen, as well as the FPS, as well as everything. So and besides just recording the phone outside, I will also record the screen itself so that you guys can actually see the numbers better for the first part. For the second parts, when things get a bit more serious, when performance is a bit more important, and when testing is a bit more important, I will turn off the screen recorder, and then we will just have the view from the camera onto the phone. So let me connect the cable into the wall. You will see the charging notification pop up on the device. There it is. Okay, so we have officially connected the phone to the charger, and let me just zoom in so that we can see the other screen. You can see the wattage at the lower part, 5.2, 5.6 watts at the moment. Now currently it is normally charging. Bypass charging kicks in once you turn on a game, as you will see. Now in some cases you actually notice the wattage being at 0, which is very weird, because I personally believe that in some instances the phone actually draws a lot more power than the charger can supply, and then it shuts off the charger in order to prevent it from being fried. So yeah, the 8 Elite might be able to draw more than 25 watts of power. So that means if I really want to somehow get full performance out of this thing, I need a much better charger as a power supply. Anyway, let me turn all the monitors on. This time I am not going to forget anything. And you might be wondering, okay, well, why do I measure power usage in this way? Why am I not using those applications? Well, for the first part, this is more accurate. For the second part, I don't trust those applications because, for example, the Scene application, the Scene 8, I believe that's the name of it. I tried to use it, but for some reason that application loves to absolutely melt one CPU core, creating an artificial bottleneck and basically crippling performance for no reason. That's why I'm not using that program, because it just gives inaccurate results. It kills performance, kills FPS, and that's not what we want to do here, because we want to see the actual game performance undisturbed and raw game performance without any bottlenecks and stuff. That the only bottleneck, if there is any, should be the CPU or GPU, if it comes to that. And then there is the other application whose name there is a Scene8, and there is the, I think, Perf Dog or something like that. I don't use that because it requires connection to the PC, which will actually stress out the battery, because it will be charging itself all the time, and that is going to cause artificial throttling. So again, you are not getting the necessary performance or the real performance of the device. So in order to avoid all of these issues, I just went the proper way, and I'm measuring the performance out from the wall. Okay, so let me go. Everything is ready, and I think it will be time to go and launch the game. You can see the API, the resolution, the driver, the CPU and GPU usage, the FPS, the GPU temperature, the RAM usage. You can see the battery temperature. You can see the CPU temperature, CPU frequencies, GPU frequencies. The GPU hotspot as well is visible. So this is how a proper test should look. Anyway, time to jump into the game, and we will be playing first with the default configuration. First part of the test is always with OpenGL and with 60 FPS, 120 FPS. Then second part we will turn on Vulkan, and then 60 FPS, 120 FPS Vulkan. And third part, custom configuration, where I go all out on the graphics. Basically, I'm going to slap overkill graphics and see what happens, as we usually do here in these tests. And we already see 15.6 watts being drawn just by loading, which is interesting. You can actually see a interesting connection between the wattage and between the CPU clocks. Overall, if you see the CPU clocks go up, the wattage will go up as it should. So let me just check the settings. Okay, everything is on the maximum. Yeah, okay. Frame generation will be off later. It will be enabled, because the overall power usage with frame generation is pretty funny. And I have to say, I think Kuro kind of messed up Vulkan performance in 2.5, or in the recent update, I believe. One of the mini updates recently, I think it messed up the Vulkan performance. And something odd, I mean, they also kind of, well, should have officially expanded Vulkan to a couple more devices, S25, S24, and Red Magic series. Although when I go in my settings, I don't see the Vulkan option anywhere. This is an S25, should be in the list of officially supported devices with Vulkan, but unfortunately the option is not there. So I believe that they messed up something with Vulkan and they're fixing it. So that's just what I believe. Who knows what happened? But 2.5, 2.4, 2.4, yeah, this is 2.4. 2.5 will, that's the next version, 2.5, will probably have official Vulkan support for the S25 and a lot more other devices. But we are seeing a 9.4 watt usage, 8.6 watt, 10.4 watt usage, which is actually quite interesting, because this is, I would say, rather not exactly high, but moderately high wattage. And the most amazing aspect of it is that we are not seeing the CPU temperatures go completely berserk yet. The CPU is at 55, the GPU is at 51, at 56 the hotspot of the GPU, and it's able to draw like 9 watts, which kind of is, it's funny, because I have seen so many other tests that claim that 3, 5 watts is basically already phone melting in your hands type of heat, supposedly. Yet from what I'm seeing here, that's actually far from being the case. We are sitting comfortably at like 9, 8, 9, 10 watts, and we are still far away from any serious temperature. I mean, 55 degrees Celsius, that's laughable temperature for the 8 Elite. Pretty funny that it's actually that low. The GPU is at 65 now, and you'll see it go up and down a little bit, but this is still way below the 105 degrees Celsius threshold on the 8 Elite. Now, for those of you who don't know, the 8 Elite does have a junction temperature of 105 degrees Celsius, which is basically the highest temperature allowed before thermal throttling will drop voltages and before the temperatures will start to go down, or it will actually attempt to maintain those high temperatures. So anything below 105 is nothing much of a problem. However, from my experience and from overall my personal view, I guess 70-75 should be the maximum temperature. I try not to go above that because that's just the temperature I feel comfortable with. 105, even though it can handle it, these things can handle the heat. I try not to get that warm with the 8 Elite. Even though it can handle it, I just don't like to go that high with the temperature. Now, we have seen the voltage drop to 0. This is now it's at 20. Okay, now we're drawing 20 watts now. This is what I'm saying, that this thing can actually draw a lot more power than the charger can supply, and you will see it to drop to 0. This is when it attempts to draw higher than 25 watts, but it can't because this is a 25 watt charger. So this kind of means that I might need to find myself a 45 watt Samsung charger for this thing in order to actually be able to take full advantage of bypass charging on this thing and to actually let this thing go full speed. The 8 Elite never really runs full speed, and that's kind of scary to think about because it just kind of confirms the theory that I had, that they took a laptop chip or a desktop chip and that they just slapped it into a phone with a much lower overall voltage, and this is pretty much how the 8 Elite got to exist. Obviously that's just me joking around, but that's what it feels like based on the power draw, based on how this thing actually behaves. If anything, this thing does not behave like a mobile chipset. This thing behaves like a laptop or desktop chipset, based on how aggressive it is with the voltages. This thing is not shy to draw power. That's a fact. If you allow this thing to draw power, it will draw power, and the scary part is it delivers the performance to go alongside with the power usage. And we are still within very acceptable temperatures. The FPS hasn't budged. I mean, 60 FPS with the default configuration, with the default settings, and with OpenGL for the 8 Elite is not a problem. This thing can run the game on 60 FPS all day long, and it's not going to really care about what's happening in the game because it's just going to handle everything without problem. The power draw is at 10.4 watts, 9.5 watts, 9.6 watts, temperature 64, and GPU 65, around that. It goes up and down, but those temperatures are acceptable and they're far away from being critical. These temperatures are actually amazing temperatures for the 8 Elite. Okay, well, let's go and move on to the next area. Now this is going to be pretty interesting. There is a little section in Septimon where I like to run quickly, and by running quickly you can basically traverse a long distance, and that seemed to be quite a taxing thing for some of the chipsets, and I like to do that to test out how much FPS and how much CPU and GPU will be used. We are at 7.88 watts power usage, temperature 56, 57, hotspot 57, average temperature 55, 54, is not bad at all, actually. It's amazing. The thermals are absolutely incredible. The FPS is even better. Did not budge. 60 FPS, flatlining at 60 FPS, doesn't matter what you do, it will stay at that. Which is still pretty funny if you look at how much power it draws. It draws quite a bit of power, yet it doesn't really get that warm. So yeah, where is that? It's also one myth that I kind of want to disprove here, because it's annoying to just have to go through that every time. No CPU will throttle at 40-45. That's a lie. That's a straight up lie. These things can handle like most of the older generations, like last 2-3 generations, are able to get 90-95 degrees Celsius easily, and that's their optimal, that's their maximum temperature. Some of the older chipsets, like the Exynos 7420, Snapdragon 835, 8045, they have a thermal threshold of 75-85. So as years progressed, as we have received newer chipsets, the overall thermal threshold on these things has been going up, because they have becoming more tolerable to heat. And overall, heat doesn't really affect them that much as it used to, because modern technology. So if you see someone saying CPU 45 and throttles, that's a lie. No CPU will throttle like that. Just look at these temperatures. I mean, this is why I like to have this as transparent as possible. Now, I believe in the overall mobile gaming scene. I feel like transparency is missing, because most of the tests that I look at a lot of tests out of curiosity, because I also am interested to see the performance of other devices. I don't really get to see the frequencies. I don't really get to see the temperatures, the real temperatures. I don't really get to see the GPU frequency, the GPU clock, the GPU utilization. You don't really get to see the real wattage. You don't really get to see any of this that I'm showing you on the screen here. And if it's shown, it's inaccurate or blatantly just not accurate information, because of the application, because of other issues. So in order to kind of set an example of how this should be done, I'm kind of doing these videos, and as I mentioned before, I will be adding more and more things as time goes on. I will be making this a lot more accurate as I go. So accuracy for me is very important, and this is how it should be done. CPU is at 60, GPU at 60, 62. It does go up and down quickly. I did set the refresh to be quick, so that it does give me an approximate idea of what's happening, what's being used more and less. Now, since I am recording, my recorder loves to eat resources. It's funny, doesn't matter what device I have. S23 recorder eats 20% GPU. 8 Elite recorder eats like 20% of the CPU, but in this case it doesn't really affect it that much though. But it's important to note that I have a recorder running it, and that recorder knows to be a little bit problematic, and I use the recorder because even to this very day it's still the best recorder that I could find, because it just has so many settings that I absolutely need, and I'll be using it for the foreseeable future, I guess. Okay, we are still on OpenGL 60 FPS, classic default configuration file, nothing changed, and overall I am really impressed by the performance in general, because it is definitely drawing a interesting amount of power, yet it doesn't seem to really get warm. I mean, it does, when I say it doesn't get warm, in my terms, getting warm is 70-75. Well, speaking of the devil, now we're at 80, 85, but it will quickly go down though. So in general, the thermals on this thing have been incredible so far, and I have absolute no complaints about the thermals. The most important and surprising thing is definitely, I would say, the power usage. I definitely did expect much higher temperatures with like 10 watts on average being used. Well, actually, the proper average would be 9 watts, which is still pretty high, to be honest. But it doesn't seem to affect it much. I guess this is where the efficiency comes into play, and the overall the way this thing has been assembled, because it still handles these temperatures just fine. And I'm also recording and I'm playing. I definitely expected those temperatures to be much higher, but that seems not to be the case. Okay, so that was the first part of the first test, and that was OpenGL 60. Now let me go and enable Vulkan. At the time I completely forgot to turn on frame generation. We will come back to that after Vulkan. I was interested how much power will Vulkan draw, and now the device is back to charging. As you can see, it's charging at 20 watts, which is pretty much what it should be at this current percentage of battery. So outside of bypass charging, as you can see, it quickly reverts back to the classic charging phase, and the second I turn on the game, you will see the wattage drop to 0 again, and then once it goes up, it means it's back into bypass charging, and it uses the charger to basically supply itself with power. So let's go back and turn on the game. It's not warm. I mean, when I touch the screen, it's actually not warm at all. It's fairly cold, which is surprising. Vulkan is enabled, as we can all see, and bypass charging is about to kick in. It takes a second or two for it to switch, which is fine. After all, if it were to abruptly switch, it will lose power and it will shut itself off, basically. So 15 watts, 18, 19 watts, okay, that's interesting. That's quite a bit of power for just loading the game. I think that's the highest power usage we have seen so far. Actually, no, it's not. 20 watts was the highest we have seen previously. 20.4 or 20.5, something like that. Okay, well, now, something quite funny happened here. Usually, it's Vulkan that's drawing less power, and previously in the previous tests, we have seen that Vulkan does draw much less power. Now, let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about. It's here somewhere. There it is. If you pause and read, you can see that the Vulkan should be available, but it's not for me for some reason. Anyway, back on topic. So we are now at 10.59 watts. We were at like 14 watts earlier, and it seems that the phone is running a little bit warmer. Now, this is pretty odd and pretty weird, and pretty much I would suggest the reason why Vulkan is not yet like available in the settings. I believe that Kuro did mess something up in one of the mini updates, and that they have disabled the Vulkan for now because they don't want less performance, and which that's fine if that's the case. So now with Vulkan, funny enough, we see Vulkan drawing a little bit more power than OpenGL, and we will see the FPS being also a little bit lower. Now this is a thing that's been ongoing for the 8 Elite. I don't know if it's a driver issue or something else, but you see how the utilization and frame rate and how the resolution is just flickering. This is a issue that popped in 2.4 in this update, currently in 2.4, and it goes away when you turn on frame generation, which is indeed very odd and very weird. So Vulkan, while it does deliver, with frame generation, Vulkan does deliver better performance and better heat performance than OpenGL, but without frame generation, OpenGL seems to be delivering better overall heat and better overall FPS. Is that weird? Is that funny? Yes, it is. Pretty weird and pretty funny, to be honest. But again, we are here to test things out and to see how things work. So, as you can see, both the FPS and the utilization window for both the CPU and the GPU are acting quite abnormal. So I'm fairly sure this is the game having issues with the driver, basically the game not being optimized properly for Vulkan currently, at least without frame generation. Power usage, we are now at definitely mostly above 10 watts. The heat output is also a little bit higher. That phone is a little bit warmer than before, but nothing drastic. Well, famous last words. Frame generation on. Now look at the power draw. That's going to be funny to look at now. But the FPS is really good, and the flicker, the resolution flicker, the CPU and GPU utilization flicker is gone, and the frame rate flicker is gone. But we are now seeing the GPU and CPU working a little bit harder. 15 watts, 14 watts, 15.4 watts, 15 watts. That's how much it draws now. -95 degrees Celsius, the hotspot 99, GPU temperature 86, 13, 14 watts power usage. I also love how the moment you enter the map, frame generation is automatically turned off and you can see the bug returning, but the second frame generation kicks in, the bug goes away. That's pretty interesting to look at, honestly. Okay, well, let's do some more boss battles. Now, this particular area is extremely demanding when you are with a custom configuration file, and when you use a very high resolution and overall when it's day with the reflections and stuff. This particular area is my favorite in the game currently. I will try to be here later when I test out the custom configuration, just to show you how hot this thing can get. But the FPS has been really good so far. Obviously, you might be wondering, okay, why does it go up and down? Well, it is frame generating from 51 FPS, and 51 plus 51 is what, 102, right? And this is pretty much what you can expect from the frame generation to show there. It will go from 102 to 120 FPS, which is fine because Vulkan is a little bit bugged, and because of the initial framed up, it will basically just upscale, or should I say frame generate from 51, which is again fine. On OpenGL it will be from 16, it will be 120 FPS, and it's not going to budge from that number. But 9 watts on average. Now we see that the device started to kind of it will actually attempt to maintain 9 watts from now, which is I guess okay. It can maintain 9 watts without a problem, which is double the number that we have seen, or well, we heard, at least I heard, because I had arguments a long time ago where I said that 5 watts is basically far from throttling, and then the other side would say no, 5 watts is your phone will catch fire and be lava, which obviously, as we can see here, that's definitely not the case, because we are well above 5 watts, and this thing just doesn't care about how much watts it's using. It doesn't really care about the heat as well. I mean, this is the A-Elite for you. It just runs. This thing just runs, and incredible thermals for how much watts it's using. These are some very good thermals for how much power it's drawing. 16.3 watts consistently. That's just incredible. 120 FPS. It will go up and down. GPU is not even, by the way, the GPU is not even maxed out. Just, to project how crazy the hardware on the 8 Elite is. The GPU is not even maxed out, by the way. 830 megahertz out of 1.2 gigahertz. So we can push this thing 50% harder, by the way. So yeah, those 25 watts is definitely looking like a legit thing for now. Okay, well, let's run around and move around a little bit more. And GPU at 92, 93. Hotspot is at 100. We are reaching the thermal threshold of the 8 Elite. We are 5 degrees away from the actual junction temperature of the 8 Elite, which means, yeah, it's still room for more heat. Is that crazy? Yes, it is. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not surprised anymore by it, because honestly, this thing just made to do this, and so far no issues. It just works, just runs. 106, 109 FPS, which is approximately what we would expect, based on the Vulkan FPS that we get on this device. Something funny, the 8 Gen 2 is actually getting a much better Vulkan performance than 8 Elite. The 8 Gen 2 gets 60 FPS on Vulkan, and it's much stable. The 8 Elite 45, 51. 60 in some cases, but that's primarily because of the drivers and because the game seems the game to be a little bit buggy with Vulkan on the 8 Elite. Which is funny, because the Vulkan officially is available for the 8 Elite devices, but yeah, I mean, I'm not too mad about that, because Kuro's working on it. Obviously they're working on it, and the largest issue was to actually get Kuro to add Vulkan support, which they did. So the biggest problem is behind us. Now we just need to wait for Kuro to actually fine-tune it, and they're doing it so far. I would say Vulkan is more important for the lower end devices, for the older chipsets, and they're actually making it work really well for those devices first. So I'm fine with that, really. I'm honestly fine with that. Okay, 9.5 watts, 10.4 watts. Alrighty then, that's not bad. Let's do some boss battles. You might be thinking, is this torture? Is this phone getting tortured? Not really. Not really. Torture would be... Oh, wait for the custom configuration to be added. Just wait for that. That's where the fun begins. 97 degrees Celsius is the GPU. Hotspot was at 101, CPU at 101. Not bad, not bad. Some decent heat there, that's for sure. Okay, battery is at 32.8. Alright. Power usage is 9 watts. Well, that's not bad at all, actually. Okay. So, let's go and... Now we have tested out Vulkan 60 FPS, Vulkan 120 FPS. Thing that remains for me to do is do OpenGL 120 FPS, because that's one thing I forgot to do, and for my bad for that. But let's go and do OpenGL 120 FPS. Vulkan is now turned off, and let's just go enable. Let's just go back to the... I actually thought to let the phone cool itself off a little bit, but you know, nah, let's just eat. It had enough time to cool itself off, already at 61 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it cooled itself off fairly quickly. Alright then. So, let's see what will happen now on OpenGL. 120 FPS plus OpenGL. Again, Vulkan plus 120 FPS it definitely feels like it is producing less heat. Although I would say at the moment, actually, I don't know. Let's just see what happens with the test. We will judge based on the data. Let's just go. Okay, let me just reset this real quick, just to make the game, just to make sure that everything is working fine. Let me go and turn frame generation on. And now, by the way, I am not a big fan of frame generation, okay? I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer native FPS, I prefer native resolution, I prefer the old school way, alright? It just, frame generation can be fun to play around with, and it can definitely help if you want higher FPS, but I prefer native FPS and native resolution a lot more than the magic FPS, fake FPS as some would call it. Well, it is decent performance. So for 9.1 watt, so the overall power draw is roughly the same. Actually, no, 10 point. Okay, maybe Vulkan might be a little bit better actually when it comes to frame generation and highest possible settings. But 9.1, 9.2. Let's actually go and do some battles. Let's see what happens there. Temperatures will generally be about the same because this phone is already kind of warm from previous tests. But actually, no, might be even lower than Vulkan. Alrighty then. That's weird. It should be the other way around. Oh, okay. And this is why we are doing these tests, because we can find out some pretty funny things like this that we found out today. Vulkan actually giving more heat than OpenGL. Alrighty then. Kuro, what are you doing? Kuro definitely did the noopsie here, I believe, with the drivers in one of the last little updates they've done. Obviously, I expect this to be better in 2.5. But obviously we are here to test things out, see what works, what doesn't work, as we usually do, so that we can pick what's best, obviously. Okay, maybe I was a bit harsh on Vulkan. 15.8 watts. Yeah, I believe Vulkan definitely a bit more power conserving than OpenGL on frame generation there, but I feel like frame generation on OpenGL, because it's actually 60 FPS, it's generating frames from 60. It's actually more stable, I would say. You can actually feel the difference there. Maybe you can. I am weird because I can feel a difference between 120 and 144 FPS, for example. So little dips, I notice them, but in this case, flatline 120 FPS, 10.3 watts power usage consistently. GPU is definitely getting warm, and the CPU is also warm. Well, warm. Warm at 99 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it's warm. Not bad heat. Acceptable heat, honestly, for the 8 Elite. 10 watts. We're still on 10 watts power usage, so it does draw a little bit more power on OpenGL. Okay, that's good to know. A little bit more power. Which is interesting because if we look at the total CPU usage, it's not really that high. This is what I'm saying, that this thing, if I was able to somehow, I don't know, plug this thing into a proper cooling solution, if I could take this chip out and put it in a small desktop or something, if I could have proper cooling, if I had access to the voltage table, and if I were able to actually see the voltage table, to see what frequencies I can get, I believe that this thing can actually get double the performance of what it already offers, because I'm almost 100% sure that this thing is running in a severely limited way, and you never really see the 8 Elite's full power in any game, because I feel like it's kind of programmed not to go that far, because if it were to go that far, I believe we would definitely see 30, 50, 40, 50 watts power usage on this thing, which is well into laptop territory. And if that's the case, then I don't know, maybe this is a laptop chip slapped into a phone. It is possible, I don't know. It's a new architecture that we have seen previously on a laptop chip, so anything is possible, really. Even though the direct architecture isn't the same, but I don't know what kind of magic they've done with this chip. All I know is that this thing is crazy fast, and it is ridiculously fun to play around with this thing, because it has so much power to play around with. I can throw anything at it, and it's not gonna budge. That's how fast the 8 Elite is. In fact, the only problem I stumble upon is that my charger doesn't deliver enough power to the chip. So I can't really push it as hard as I want it to push it. So I need a 45 watt charger if I want to get some funny numbers on the 8 Elite here. But overall, I mean, this has been a very fun test for me to do. The power usage there it's very stable actually. It consistently eats 9.5, 9 watts of power, and it doesn't seem to have any intentions of actually throttling here. It doesn't have any intentions of using less power. So the 8 Elite is able to efficiently maintain about 9 watts without caring apparently, which is interesting for a mobile chip, very interesting for a mobile chip, because this is some serious performance that we're getting out of this thing. And if you really want to replicate the same thing, it's very easy to do so. You just need to get one of these, like one of these phone coolers, and honestly they're decent one is actually going to get the job done. This is what I'm using, by the way. And why am I using the cooler? Well, it's summer, my room is like 40 degrees Celsius, and I don't want to burn this thing to the ground, obviously. I want to torture it, even though it doesn't get warm. Even without the cooling, it doesn't get warm. I mean, honestly, I don't really think the cooling does anything in this case because of my room temperature, but anything that can help with the temperatures is definitely appreciated. 9.1 watts power draw, okay. 9.19, 120 FPS, super stable FPS. Temperature is also around the same temperatures that we have seen before. And that means we will soon go and slap the custom configuration on this thing. Oh, that's going to be... You will see something very funny and very crazy. I mean, if you've been following for a while, you probably know what's going to happen very soon. But this is pretty much what you can expect from the 8 Elite. Performance-wise, power draw-wise, it is a very weird processor, very powerful processor so far. And they've done some magic to get this thing to draw so much power and to maintain these temperatures. This is some very good performance. Okay, let's do a boss battle, because why not? I'm thinking, what else can I do? What else can I add with the custom configuration file to put more stress on this thing? But first things first, I definitely need a better charger. I need a 45 watt Samsung charger, official one. It will definitely deliver much more power to the processor and basically allow me to hopefully use this thing, or should I say, with more electricity, this thing will have more power to play around with, which is going to be quite the test, actually. 9.9, 9.1, 9 watts. Yeah, it seems like the sweet spot is 9 watts. 9 watts for 90 degrees Celsius. Interesting watt to temperature ratio there. FPS is flatline 120 FPS. This is insane performance, by the way. I mean, I say insane performance. It's to be expected from the 8 Elite. This thing packs quite a lot of power, and obviously it's able to deliver it just fine. Okay, so the grand finale. custom configuration, my favorite part of the video, because I can go all out on the graphics. I can put as much stress on the hardware as I wish. So, safety first though, let's turn off frame generation. We will turn it on later, but you know, just not to go crazy too fast, right? Let's go and let's go back to the let's go first. Let me just turn this off. Okay, let's go and open this little application. Let me copy and paste the custom configuration file. I have like 11 of them now over here. Every time when I find something interesting, I put it in and I just save it, and just, you know, it just keeps going. The list expands. You know, the code list, the command list in the custom configuration is longer and longer every day. Yeah, you might be thinking, is this an obsession? Maybe, but I just like to play around with this. It's fun, and I like to throw as much as I can on this thing because I want to see where the limit is. So far, I wasn't able to find a limit. It just eats everything I throw at it. So let's copy this and let me just put it back in the original place. As you can see, the phone is now normally charging. As you can see, based on how much power it's currently delivering to the battery. It's very easy to notice the switch to bypass charging, because it always drops to 0 when you turn on the game, because that's what it should be doing if it's legitimate bypass charging. Okay, we will be recording screen for this one. There it is. Okay, because I want you guys to experience the same graphics that I'm going to experience right now. So let's boot up the game, watch the wattage, 20.8, 20.5, and any moment now it should drop to 0 when it starts to use, there it is, 0. It's switching from the battery to the charger, and once the power draw goes up again, it means that it's switched to the charger as a primary power source. We are now powering the device through the charger, 19.7 watts loading screen. Yikes, that's a lot of power for a loading screen. This is a thing actually that I need to send Kuro, because they used to fix this. This used to be fixed. The game didn't burn your phone while loading, because I reported that issue. I guess I need to report it again. I feel like Kuro will be very surprised when they see someone just eat up a direct like wattage monitor there. They don't expect that probably, or maybe they already know what I'm doing and maybe they already expect that from me, because I'm one of the very few crazy ones that actually does stuff like this. So let's see what we can do. Well, this game looks absolutely amazing now. And we are already at 9.7 watt power usage. Lovely. Let's turn on frame generation. Oh my god, I'm going to regret that for sure. And 121 FPS on 4x resolution, 4x native. Now this is a thing that is kind of noticeable with Unreal Engine games. So for some reason, you know, this game doesn't really like to use the GPU a lot, so you can go crazy on the resolution and the overall GPU impact will be minimal. In fact, you can actually get better performance in some cases if you actually bump up the resolution on the game, because you force the GPU to work harder. So that's what I personally noticed, and this game doesn't really seem to be that GPU demanding, which is something that I've seen a lot of different takes on the GPU load. Some say, oh look, 100% GPU, yet we never see the frequency. This is what I'm saying. Frequency is important, because 100% on 1.2 GHz is not the same as 100% use on 320 MHz. That's the thing. It can say 100%, yet the frequency is the lowest possible. It can say 100% and the frequency is the highest possible. So there's a huge difference in power draw and a huge difference in performance between the two frequencies that I mentioned here. So a proper test definitely needs to show everything. You can't just show load, CPU load, GPU load without showing the frequency. You can't do that. That is going to lead to some very inaccurate results down the road. So that's why I'm showing everything I can here. I said I'll be loyal. I'm definitely going to be loyal. I'll show everything. With me, everything is transparent. Everything that I find, everything that should be seen will be seen. No secrecy, just transparency with me, with these tests. As simple as that. And I will actually do the same test with the power monitor, with the wattage monitor on the S23. I'm very interested to see how much power will that thing draw compared to the 8 Elite. It will be funny if it draws less power though. That would be pretty funny actually. Now with the custom configuration, we definitely see the same power draw at like a 9.6, 9.7 watts. That's approximately what this device likes to use. And I feel like it kind of stabilized itself based on the heat and based on the FPS and based on the current load. It kind of stabilizes at 9.9, 9.8, 9 watts, sometimes 10 watts, sometimes above that, but average 9.2, 9.3, 9.5 watts of power is being drawn by the 8 Elite while playing this game, which is interesting because that's not a small number for a phone. That's actually quite a lot of that's double the Snapdragon 865. The 865 draws about 5 watts, like on average. This does double that and delivers like quadruple the FPS, which is insane. Anyway, let me just go and do what I said that I'll do. This is the most, I would say, the best looking area currently, depending on the time of the day, obviously. But the reflections and everything on this particular place just looks absolutely stunning, and you will see that on just pay a close attention on the temperature, or just look at the temperature. Now we're looking at the temperatures. Look at that GPU temperature. Oh, there it is, 102. We hit 102 degrees Celsius. 9.3 watts power usage. It's actually very smart in diverting power to the right components. Very smart in that, I have to admit. Yeah, we are definitely hitting 100 degrees Celsius now. That's very warm. 103, 105, there it is. We hit threshold. Mission accomplished. We managed to actually hit the maximum possible temperature on the 8 Elite. Okay, let's do... Actually, you know what? I think this phone did work enough for today. I will probably, let's just end the test here. So, that was the performance test. OpenGL versus Vulkan, and you could see the power usage. And this time I actually fixed the... I've added the extra monitor I forgot to add last time. So, with that being said, these are some very interesting results. This thing does have some very interesting power usage and overall very interesting power drop and very interesting thermals overall. I did not expect to see such high power drop, but at the same time, based on the heat, I kind of expected something similar. So overall, this thing is a beast. The 8 Elite is definitely rightfully named the best mobile chipset of 2025, and it's still the best mobile chipset ever to be released in this current moment of time. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support me, if you'd like to see more tests, then feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe. As always, I'll see you next time.